Medieval life. Medieval life. Weakening of central government made a new political system known as feudalism formed in Western Europe. Feudalism is a highly decentralized form of government that stresses alliances of mutual protection between monarchs and nobles of varying degrees of power. Mainly held in northern France around 8900 and spread to the rest of Western Europe by the AD mid-1000s. Feudal relationships, Part 1. In AD 700, Charles Martel was fighting the Muslims. The Muslims used saddles with stirrups that enabled them to fight on horseback using a sword or lance. Charles wanted to adopt this, however the cost of keeping this force would require a new military system. To do this, Martel began granting warriors fiefs or estates within peasants. From these fiefs, warriors got the income to buy horses and battle equipment. That's a saddle. Feudal relationships, Part 2. By the AD 900s, such arrangements among nobles and monarchs emerged as feudalism. Lords who had been granted fiefs were allowed to pass their lands on to the heirs. In return, these nobles were to provide knights or mounted warriors for the royal army. As you can see, the blue arrows represent military service for the lower ranks, providing for the higher ranks, and the orange arrows represent fiefs, which is the higher ranks providing for the lower ranks. Feudal obligations. Ties between a lord and a vassal were made an official in a solemn ceremony known as a homage. In return for a fief, a vassal pledged to perform certain duties or military service. The vassal agreed to provide his lord with a certain number of knights for battle during a period of 40 to 60 days each year. Also, he would provide food and lodging when the lord came visiting, and to contribute funds when his oldest son became a knight or his oldest daughter became married. As you can see, the knight is providing money, military service, and food for the king.
Castles for defense. Every noble had a castle for themselves. In AD 1000s, castles were started to be made from stone. Since a lack of strong central government and warfare, they made castles. Castles were surrounded by deep moats. As you can see here, they have cannons to defend their castle. Lords. A lord is also known as a nobleman. After he had almost all authority of his fief, they collected rents from peasants. They settled disputes between his vassals. That is a lord. Lady, known as a noblewoman. Her father would select her husband as early as the age of 12 years old. They took care of needlework, medicines, and sometimes took care of the estate. Her main duty was to raise the children and kept the household clean. There's a picture of the lady. Entertainment. Nobles looked forward to tournaments. They had mock battles between knights. They loved to hunt, and men and women did falconry and archery. Nobles were entertained by ministries and singers at the harp.
Life in the castle. The medieval castle was both a castle and a home. They went from 4 wooden towers and barracks, then they became stone. Archers shot intruders from the towers while soldiers dump boiling liquids on attackers. The castles were surrounded by a moat, which a drawbridge crossed. The castle consistently smelled of animal and human waste. It was mainly used as a military base. This is a picture of archers defending it and soldiers pouring hot liquids on the intruders.
Becoming a knight. A woman's son starts to train as a knight at age 7. First, they are pages or assistants. When they turn 15, they become squires. After that, once they prove themselves in battle, they become knights at a ceremony. The knights come to learn chivalry, which is a code of the knights have to follow. Be brave in battle, fight fairly, keep promises, defend church, and respect a royal woman. And here's the trilogy script.
Manorial system. A new form of government that provides all people with food, shelter, and protection. There's the manorial system. work on a manor. In return for the Lord's protection, the peasants did many things for the Lord. The chief farmed his land and gave him various goods. Every time a peasant collected grain at his mill, they had to leave some for him. If they baked bread in the Lord's oven, they had to leave a loaf for him. The peasants did many things/jobs. They herded sheep. They were artisans, blacksmiths, carpenters, shoemakers, millers, vintners, and brewers. Most peasants were serfs, people who were bound to the manor and could not leave it without permission. There's a peasant working on the farm. Increased production. The manors only produced enough food for the peasants and the Lord. A plow was created to farm, which meant less time in the fields for the peasants and farmers. A new crop rotation was created called a 3-field system. This system produced more crops than the old system and helped to preserve the soil. Those are the crops that are being farmed.
The end. Jake, director, narrator, and slider.
Ryan, editor, narrator, slider.
Samuel, scribe, narrator, slider.
Jeremy, illustrator, narrator, slider, and cameraman.